Hi, I'm Victor Lucas from the Electric Playground, and I've been a part of the video game community for about 16 years and a fan of Japanese video games for more than half my life. And as a fan, the events in Japan recently have really affected me, and I had this feeling that people in the video game community were feeling the same way that I was. So I sent emails out to friends and colleagues in the video game community, people that write about video games, people that make them, people that work on other video game television shows, and I asked them to get involved to help raise awareness and to raise donations for the Red Cross and its quake and tsunami relief efforts, and everybody jumped on board right away. And I have to tell you, after taking a look at this footage, it's very clear to me without a doubt that gamers love Japan.
If I think about the Japanese games creators, there's a hell of a lot of them. But, King of the Hill has to be Miyamoto. Right from the first time I played one of his games, Donkey Kong, in the arcades, up until the present day, he's consistently given us experiences that have obsessed me and have shown me the way forward in gameplay and in innovation, and he's just so wonderfully consistent. The best game out of Japan, it's like trying to, go into a sweet shop and pick a sweet. There's hundreds of games that have been brilliant. But really, what Miyamoto did with Super Mario 64 is he took his platform game and turned it into a 3D world. It was a huge world, it was engaging, there was so many new mechanics in there. It just made you feel, 3D, here we come, and I thought that was a seminal moment in computer gaming. I love going to Japan. It's like going to another planet. It's the colors, the vibrance of the people, the energy of the people. It's the craziness of the world. You can turn around a corner and it could be full of karaoke bars, and another corner can be a university full of students, and another corner can be just an amazing assault on the senses with all the bright lights. It's just an incredible place to go. And that, coupled with this culture that has existed for thousands of years, that is, so consistent, it's an unbelievably safe place to go. It's, the people respect each other. It's just like nowhere else on earth.
The thing that really jumps out at me about Japanese games are the aesthetic. It's one that's always captivated me. There are plenty of games that have loved over the years, all the way from Ninja Gaiden and Strider. Castlevania Symphony of the Night has always been a big favorite of mine, but it hasn't just been video games, it's also been anime, because in many respects the two cultures kind of overlap, at least they did for me. Ghost in the Shell, Evangelion have all had an impact on me in many similar ways as the games that I've played from Japan. I've lived in Japan for 3 years, and there wasn't a day that went by my entire time there that I had a bad experience just engaging, interacting, and socializing with folks in Japan. If I had an opportunity to go back and live in Japan for a while, and I'd take them up on that.
There's not only one game that inspired me to work in the video game industry. There's tons of them. My favorite video game creator is Yu Suzuki. He created games such as Virtual Fighter, Hang-On, Outrun, Daytona USA. He's the one who brings a lot of innovation in the video game industry.
For me, the best game to come out of Japan is Resident Evil. It introduced us to the world of survival horror. The sequel, Resident Evil 2, was perhaps in some ways a better game, but I always get nostalgic for the original Resident Evil. And it also introduced the genre of video games, survival horror. And while we're talking about Shinji Mikami, I should point out that he was also the planner behind Aladdin for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, and that was one of the only video games based on a movie that didn't completely suck. I think Japanese video games stand out because the culture of Japan is so different from North America and Europe, where in Japan they have different priorities when it comes to elements of game design. Their style, their storytelling priorities are just different. So when you pick up a game from Japan, you know it's going to be a very different experience from what you'll get from a typical North American game.
When I think of Japanese game creators, there's only one name that comes to mind, and that's Shigeru Miyamoto, because he's made some of the best games in the world ever. The best game to come out of Japan, for me, has to be Mario 64. For me, that one was very special. I remember playing that for the first time and it being a very magical and sort of immersive experience. Totally loved it. And I wouldn't say that's just one of the best games to come out of Japan, I'd say that's one of the best games in the world.
I think Japanese games are special because For me, and I think for you guys as well, growing up, it was always the mystique of there's this faraway land where magic happens, and that magic is Super Mario Brothers, and they literally owned the space. I mean, that was where games were made. That's where everything, that whole industry was made in Japan.
Do you guys remember games like the original Ninja Gaiden?
Oh, yeah.
It's so Japanese. And same thing with Street Fighter, where you have this samurai culture, this ninja culture that as a kid I was completely obsessed with.
Yeah, like Shinobi, Revenge of Shinobi.
Oh my
Love
gosh.
that.
Well, I think the best games to have come out of Japan
Plural.
are Ico and Shadow of the Colossus. They are distinctly Japanese in that they are extremely poetic and kind of a little messagey in the way that a Miyazaki movie would be.
Those games were so inspiring, and it made you want to live in those worlds and talk about those worlds. And I think,
There's so many reasons to love Japan. The noodles being fairly hot. Sushi? Are you kidding me? Anybody that brings me sushi, I'm in.
I went as an exchange student to Japan when I was 16. I had my 17th birthday there, and I was enamored with the culture and the romanticism of that sort of honorable samurai culture that I was super into Street Fighter at that time and super into Japanese fighting games.
There are things in Japan that we would love that you can't have. You just can't get them.
You can't get them.
I finally went to Japan for the first time 2 or 3 years ago. I've only been once, and it was so overwhelming. And you go to Akihabara, which is the sort of like electronics district, and you go in and you're like, this is serious electronics. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like
We're not
5
messing
Radio
around
Shacks
anymore.
exploded into the streets, and that's like, I mean, it's like being in Blade Runner. It's great. I mean, Japan. It's Japan.
Japan.
We love Japan.
Yeah.
I think what makes Japanese games really unique is their culture. I mean, and they're not afraid to show that in their games. Whether it's in the artistic direction, the story, the type of humor, or even the gameplay and the way that the game is tweaked or balanced, you do feel that it's a Japanese game when you play it. They have the Japanese touch. It's something that you find in Japanese games that you don't find anywhere else. My favorite game that was made in Japan has to be Final Fantasy I. I spent the entire summer of 1990 playing that game, and probably fall and winter and the spring following that. It has to be the game that I finished most often. It just delivered the fantasy of playing Dungeons and Dragons so well that I just loved it.
I love Japan. I love what Japan's given to the world, especially the games it's given to the world, the culture it's given us. And I would appeal to you, if you've felt any enjoyment from any computer game from Japan, they really need our help now. Just go online to the website, donate something however small, just please give to help.
Japan and Japanese game makers and Japanese game designers have had an incredible influence on the progression of video games, both in the games they've made for us all the way back to Space Invaders and Pac-Man, and the incredible technology that's come out of Japan, the Nintendo systems, Sony systems, etc. They pushed the boundaries forward both in terms of game design and in terms of game hardware. When I was a youngster, I had no idea that there was this concept of computers could be fun until I played the Space Invaders and Pac-Man. But as soon as I saw that opportunity, I realized that was something that I wanted to do with my career, with my life. In a lot of ways, Japanese games were what inspired me to become a game designer. I have to say that my favorite Japanese game is the Gran Turismo series. I am a fan of the racing games, and those games just kind of grabbed me. They're one of the few games that I found myself 3 or 4 in the morning having to just one more race. This is just a great time to acknowledge the contributions that Japan has made to the gaming industry and how they've really changed all of our lives as gamers and how important that has been to us. And I think it's an opportunity for us to give a little bit back.
What seems to be so unique and special about Japanese games is that there's a touch of both the familiar and the completely unfamiliar. And you can just see that in gameplay styles and imagery that seems like you've seen it before somewhere in American pop culture, but once it gets into the hands of a Japanese developer, it's really turned around into something that's intriguing because you want to understand it better and better. And I think that's really at the core of why so many people love Japanese games and why they are willing to commit so many hours trying to better understand those worlds they create. My favorite at the end of the day has got to be Suda51. His level of daring and innovation is a little bit awe-inspiring. I mean, Killer 7, I cannot imagine any other human being on the earth making that game. And he just finds a way to take American pop culture icons, his punk ethos, all those things that we kind of find so blasé here in the US, and refashions them in a game that they They seem either completely silly or like they're brand new. They're so awesome for the first time over. There's one game that inspired me to get into video games. It's Ghosts and Goblins. Now, of course, I was so young when I was playing it, I didn't know if it was Japanese or Czech, but at the end of the day, it was just completely awesome. It really was, to my mind, one of the first games that had such a clear sense of art direction, a sense of mystery in this world. I think the best game to come out of Japan would have to be Ueda-san's Ico. It just shows the level of daring you are able to see in Japanese game design. I have a hard time imagining that game being made anywhere else. And just the idea of trying to say, like, hey, here's a game with absolutely no talking where a boy tries to lead a girl out of a dungeon and he has horns on his head. It really is a touching, beautiful game that understands that less can be so much more in a game, and it's really one of those rare special accomplishments in all of game design. You walk into the streets of Tokyo and you see those buildings going all the way up to the sky and those video screens, and you feel you're in a place that is just absolutely alive and electric and seems to have a very, very good sense of the modern and always trying to go one step further.
It's one of the things for me that's always made Japanese games, extremely special, whether, back from when I was a kid or whether now, is simply kind of the culture that gets mixed into the Japanese games themselves. I guess I'd actually have to say Torinobu Itagaki is probably my favorite Japanese game developer. It's not to say, I don't got mad respect for Miyamoto and Yu Suzuki and a bunch of other guys I grew up idolizing because they made, the games that I have known and loved. But really, I think it's just the fact that Ninja Gaiden was an awesome game, and it kind of, stacked up there pretty high for me for the games that I loved when I was playing them on the NES. Really, it's kind of like the overall, Japanese gaming package that was kind of really what pushed me into wanting to know more about Japan. And there's so many reasons Japan is super awesome. And if I had to go with why I love Japan, Japan is gaming to me in a lot of ways. If I think about the first trip I ever went over to Japan and got to see these arcades that were there still, even though they had pretty much died in America. So I love Japan because it's kind of like Blade Runner with really good sushi and really good games.
Japanese games have had such a huge impact on our industry as a whole. For me, one of my personal favorites is Donkey Kong. Any Miyamoto game is good. Donkey Kong for me had a profound impact. It made me want to go to the arcade, just want to play more. And it wasn't even that I was amazing at it, it just drew me in. It was just so fun. It was something that made me love the industry.
I think Japanese games are amazingly unique because of their visual aesthetics as well. I particularly think characters like Bomberman, Super Bomberman, the Japanese have a much more lithe, kind of sleek character design, and almost all their character designs that you just don't see in America. There's just a really neat illustrative style that comes out in Japanese aesthetic.
Really, the game that just blew my mind was Silent Hill 2. I absolutely love that game. I think that it, just in terms of horror storytelling, it allowed me to feel horror in a way that I had never experienced it before.
The thing that makes Japanese games so special to me is they just build upon the sort of very rich history of storytelling that exists within Japan. It's impossible to say what the best game that's come out of Japan is, because when I think back of loads of the games that I've played throughout my life, many of my favorites are Japanese. I think probably the one that I really remember having the biggest impact on me was actually Donkey Kong on the Game & Watch. And I just remember long car journeys or being with my brothers and sisters and us playing this beloved Game & Watch. And I was just, as I was answering this question, I was just thinking that to me is probably an important, one of the most important, brings back lots of memories. I love Japan because Japan is a total feast for the senses. Everywhere you go, everything you experience is just amazingly vivid, and I love the smells and the sound and what it looks like, and I love what I eat there. I've never left Japan not feeling way more inspired than when I arrived. It's just a very magical place.
What's special about Japanese games? Well, the gameplay is mainly special. You never know what you're going to get from these games. Take a game like Katamari Damacy. When this game came out, what do? You roll up a ball with chunk. That was fun. Of course, there's a game that made it happen for me in the business. It was Castlevania. That was the game that gave me a taste of what was forthcoming in the industry. And that's what made me go into that business, actually. I love that game, still play it.
What makes Japanese games so special is their unique perspective, especially from American audiences. Japanese games are created by designers who came from a completely different culture, which really gives them a unique presentation and experience that you can't find anywhere else. One Japanese game that inspired me was probably Pac-Man. I know it sounds like the simple answer, but it was one of those games that was easy to pick up and play, difficult to master, and it attracted so many players. It certainly was one of the inspirations for me in my younger days.
I have many favorite Japanese game creators, but I think I have a soft spot somewhere in my heart for Tetsuya Mizuguchi. He has managed to combine two of my favorite passions, music and video games, into one. If you look at a game like Rez, which was well before its time, it introduced the concept of synesthesia and allowed people to really feel music while they were playing it. Space Channel 5 was groundbreaking on the Dreamcast. Lumines is an amazing combination of puzzles and music, and he just blows my mind. So I always have a smile on my face when I'm playing one of his games. If you'd like to help with earthquake relief in Japan, please donate to the Red Cross through our website, gamersheartjapan.com.
I think what makes Japanese games so special is the fact that they're just so playful. If you look at so many other games, they're dark, they involve guns, explosions, killing. The Japanese games are much more childlike. They're bright, they're really just about play. And I think that they're unapologetic about it as well. If you look in Japan, people of all ages are playing these games. And I think that's the DNA of games, is that they're about fun. I think the inspiration I got from Japanese games was in a much broader sense, in terms of the cultural impact. My neighbor many years ago was Japanese, and she ran a company out of her house, and they were all Japanese people that worked there. And I remember the week that Super Mario World came out. For about the next 2 weeks, that entire office shut down. Everybody was playing Super Mario World there for the next 2 weeks. It was like a festival. And it was amazing when you kind of multiply that times all the millions of people out around the rest of the world that were playing Mario at the same time. The fact that a game could have such a deep cultural impact and in such a joyful way. I mean, really, it was this celebration of play and a bonding experience.
My favorite Japanese game creator is Genpai Yokoi. He slays me, let me just put it this way, because basically he made Metroid, worked on Metroid, my favorite game of all time, with ease. He made the Game Boy, which I think basically changed bathroom behavior worldwide forever. He also did Game & Watch. He made Rob the Robot. On top of that, I mean, he did Virtual Boy, which I know was a big giant, mess. Ultimately, it was 3D, and he was kind of to innovate. Yes. I lived through the video game crash, and I remember when video games went away in 1983, and I was kind of like, oh, because Atari kind of sucked at the end, by the way. I didn't really mind that it had stopped because all the games were the same. But I remember going to a buddy's house and like seeing the NES for the first time and going like, oh my God. Now I had played games in the arcade still and did some of the things like that. I was still gaming. But it wasn't until I saw this and saw the power that could come to home, it just really blew me away. And then you start to play Miyamoto's games and the stuff that he had done in that era. And I mean, really, truly innovative stuff. That's really what got me back on the video game bandwagon. And that's when I couldn't put the NES down after that and went straight from the NES right to working at Game Informer.
Japanese game is very special because they invented video game. There's a lot of innovation and craft went into the games. And many of the Japanese games, when you play them, you can actually feel the developers in them. And I think that is very important. My favorite Japanese game creator would be Fumito Ueda-san. He's the creator of Ico and Shadow of the Colossus and the upcoming game Last Guardian. The reason I like his game is that his game gives me this sense of awe and wonder, which is very rare and unique. The best game ever coming out of Japan is Final Fantasy VII because I named myself after that game.
I think what makes Japanese video games so special is that they tend to be really unique and really from the soul of the designer. Like, you can tell a lot of the designer's experience went into the making of the game. You see a game like Pikmin from Shigeru Miyamoto, which came from his love of gardening. And there's just a charm and like a personality that comes through a lot of these games. There's just a creativity over there that I really appreciate. I think the world would be a very, very different place were it not for the artistic contributions of Japan.
Something I love about certain Japanese titles is their ability to just kind of go nuts with the universe and fully embrace a certain level of madness that you can only see in a Japanese game. That is something that we as Westerners are often very scared to do. The Japanese game that inspired me the most, it was actually One-Two Punch. I was a child and I had played Super Mario Brothers at a friend's house, and I was enamored with this world where I was this kind of a chunky plumber character who was just finding secret mushrooms throughout by hitting my head randomly on blocks and trying to skip to different worlds and things like that. When you follow that with Zelda coming through about a year later, I was completely enamored with both those titles, so it was a combination of Zelda and Mario that really launched my desire to be in the industry. I think when you compare Eastern versus Western design philosophies, not only with games but also with narrative, there's just fundamental structural differences in how developers think in regards to game mechanics, in regards to approaching narrative, in regards to approaching overall product experience. Every time I sit down and I play a game that is distinctly Japanese, I feel like I'm learning something from it. My favorite Japanese developed games such as Silent Hill and Fatal Frame were so good at the creeping fear that kind of makes the hairs in the back of your neck stand up and all the subtleties that are involved in making something truly and utterly terrifying. The best game for me personally, the series in general that's come out of Japan, has been Street Fighter. Because when I look at Street Fighter 2 and then the recent iterations of it, it is such a finely tuned, perfectly balanced kind of brawler that is not only great for playing the ladder, but also for playing against friends. So many memories at the arcade, putting quarters up on the arcade cabinet, trying to take out somebody with Chun-Li, and then just looking at the character designs and the backgrounds and the Eastern representation with characters like Chun-Li, as well as the Western representation of characters like Guile. It really kind of hits on both fronts for me.
They were the foundation for the industry as a whole. I mean, you think back to a lot of the notable games throughout this industry's history, Space Invaders, Pac-Man, Donkey Kong. I mean, it's just amazing how important Japanese games have been to the overall history of the industry and just how integral they've been to the games that we see today.
And you think about the quality of the games that come out of Japan. I mean, Pac-Man was a phenomenon at the time when you were playing it in arcades and at the pizza parlor. And you can still play that game and have a great time today on the systems we have today. So it's really just incredible, the legacy in Japan.
Japanese games are so special because they're so crazy. Katamari, Nobi Nobi Boy, these are games you wouldn't see a Western developer necessarily tackle, and Japan's been doing it for years. My favorite Japanese game developer is Hideo Kojima, Metal Gear. It was just such a touchstone franchise for me, and it did so much so right that it really, really inspired me to be part of the industry.
My name is Pliskin.
At that time in the games, there was nobody really doing what that game did. It was a movie, and it was something you were interacting with and jumping in, and it really showed me how far the medium could come.
One of my favorite video game designers who happens to also be Japanese is Yuji Naka. He is the creator of Sonic the Hedgehog, but he also was the programmer of many of the first few Phantasy Star titles and really got me into thinking that video games were more than just punch and kick and jump. The Japanese game that is most likely responsible for me getting into the video game industry is probably Street Fighter 2. It's a game that I spent a lot of time on when I was in high school. I went to a lot of arcades, played a lot of it. I think I could have probably bought my own Street Fighter 2 arcade cabinet with all the quarters that I had pumped into it. That game practically invented the genre of fighting games as far as I'm concerned, and that's a game that just made me want to learn more about video games. They really appreciate culture there and arts. It's visible in everything that I see coming out of Japan, from manga to anime to video games, even music. Some very cool bands out of Japan. Gotta say hello to Guitar Wolf. Love Japan.
I think that Japanese games have a unique character, and for example, Ico, which is my all-time favourite game, has a muted palette and a beauty to it which has never been matched by any other game. Growing up as a child, games like Sonic the Hedgehog and Mario were defining platformer experiences, but it was really when I saw Ico on the PlayStation 2 that I got turned on to the idea of the narrative storytelling and the emotion that you can get in games. Fumito Ueda, who created Ico and Shadow of the Colossus, I think has a unique voice and an artistic sensibility which no other game developer is even close to.
Why do I love Japan? Well, there's a lot of reasons, but I suspect the biggest reason is that I grew up there. I lived there from early childhood through my teens, and that's a love that I still have, you know, even now in my 30-something years. Japan's beauty lies in its resilience, in its faith, in the strength of its people. What I love about Japan most is that everyone relies on each other and everyone takes care of each other. If you'd like to help with relief for the earthquake in Japan, please donate to the Red Cross through our website, gamersheartjapan.com.
What makes Japanese-made games so special is often the universal appeal of them. These are games that are beloved around the world. It doesn't matter your age, your gender, whether you're a hardcore gamer or a casual one. There's something to be said about a game that really has universal appeal that transcends all cultures and geography. The Super Mario Brothers series is my favorite, and I think the best series to come out of Japan. And I think in particular, Super Mario Brothers 3 really took off and set the bar very high for video games at the time. And it's not just, you know, the graphics at the time and the controls, but just really all the game elements, the little secrets, the characters, everything that keeps a gamer glued to the TV well into the night was found in this game.
The first Japanese game that captured my heart and mind was the first arcade experience I could play at home, Super Mario Brothers. I saw it in the arcade at my local Showbiz Pizza. When I realized I could play that game at home, I had to have it. I was the first kid at my school to have an NES, and from that Christmas morning on, I was a gamer. I was so blown away when I first played Mario 64. I don't know that I'll ever have that profound an experience with a game again. It brought 3D gaming to the masses and set the precedent for the types of games we're still playing today. It simultaneously changed my perceptions of what games could be and showed me what games are going to be like in the future.
The thing that makes Japanese games so special is that they often take their time in the development process and they get it right. Probably the best game that's come out of Japan was the Super Mario games, that whole series. So culturally impactful to so many millions and millions of people around the world.
I think what makes Japanese games particularly special is the creativity and the sense of whimsy. There's stuff over there that, you know, you'd never think of in Western gaming. You know, something like Shadow of the Colossus is the height of gaming and what it can mean. But, you know, I also love Professor Layton and the guys at Level 5. And, you know, there's a series that, you know, I'm waiting with bated breath for more to get translated. So there are just so many games from over there that I love. I think that's one of those things that their culture and their appreciation of pop culture is just a little bit ahead of ours. The other thing is they don't look down on some of the things that here in the West that we do. For instance, everybody there reads comics on the subway. You know, gaming is such a huge part of everyday life.
My generation grew up with the Japanese games, so they are part of our childhood. Zelda, A Link to the Past. It's a perfect merge of characters and gameplay merged together, you know, to create this great immersion. You know, the immersion for me is very important. This game just nailed that perfectly.
We love Japan for a lot of reasons. It's a fun place to visit, fantastic food, and when you think about Japanese games, you have to start with games like Street Fighter, you've got Resident Evil, and then you've got more adventuresome titles. Final Fantasy, great Japanese role-playing game stalwarts. There's such a breadth of experience there that without Japanese games, we'd be much less rich.
Today's video game industry wouldn't exist without the contributions from Japanese game developers and game creators. When I think of Japanese games, the one word that comes to mind is purity. There's a purity of focus in the way that Japanese game designers create their games. There's a purity of the mechanics and the actual gameplay. When you pick up a Japanese game and play it in your hands, it just feels different. Japanese games are some of the most fun games that I remember playing over the past 20 years. They're also really inventive and bold ideas come out of Japan. Of course, there are great games from creators like Miyamoto and Kojima, but I also think of other series that have had an impact on me, like the Devil May Cry series, the Street Fighter series, and even some of the more recent games from companies like Platinum Games or Clover Studios. I mean, there have been some amazing game developers over there that have created games that I think have always made us get excited about where the business is going. And that's what I love about Japanese games, is that they're never predictable. These creators, I mean, they're always pushing the business in new directions with new intellectual properties. Japan has been a really important part of the gaming industry, and I think they don't necessarily get the credit that we sometimes give to our developers over here for the incredible work that they do. They're obviously a humble group of developers over there in Japan, but have made such a tremendous contribution to the gaming industry.
I think one of the things that makes Japanese games so special is that there's a fantastical quality to them. They're not afraid to take risks and to do some things that are completely wild and completely out of the box, and you really have to appreciate them for that. I'd have to say my favorite Japanese game creators are Miyamoto or Kojima, mainly just because of the amazing things that they've done for video games over the years, creating Mario, creating Metal Gear, just constantly innovating. It's just pretty much my entire love of everything from the NES and the Super Nintendo era up through today, all the PlayStation games I grew up loving. I love everything about Japan, whether the food, the culture, the games, just everything. It's just a great place, a really interesting place to visit.
Japanese games have had a huge influence on many of us who work in the Western development world. A lot of us have grown up playing Japanese games, and for me personally, I spent countless hours in college playing Super Metroid, playing Zelda, playing Super Mario Brothers, and I learned a lot about game design. They have a unique charm, something that a lot of us in the Western world have tried to emulate over the years, but there's something just really special about their characters, their stories, and their sense of humor. One of the best games that come out of Japan in the last few years, at least in my opinion, is Resident Evil 4. It's a game that I had a blast playing, and it's a game that really elevated character, story, and third-person action.
My name's Leon. I'm under the President's order to rescue you.
I've been very fortunate to go to Japan many times simply because I'm in the video game industry. And every time I've gone, I've fallen in love with the food, the architecture, the culture, and especially the people. My favorite Japanese game creator is Gunpei Yokoi. He's the creator of the Game Boy and also the producer on Metroid, and through his work with Miyamoto and his own productions has influenced millions and millions of gamers around the world. If you'd like to help with earthquake relief in Japan, please donate to the Red Cross through our website at gamersheartjapan.com.
Japan is this place that is crazy cool. It's still traditional, it's very modern. It's just got all these different things about it that it just puts together, and it just keeps it together really well, and it just produces amazing things. I think what makes Japanese games so special is they're really imaginative. You've got some really crazy games like Nobby Nobby Boy. Then you've got some also really artistically imaginative games like the Final Fantasy series, which is just beautiful to look at. My favourite Japanese game creator is Fumito Ueda, and he created the Ico and Shadow of Colossus games. When I played these games, they just completely blew me away, and it was just such an experience, and I think whoever could make something that just touched me in that way is just a genius. So the reason I'm in the games industry is because of Final Fantasy VII. When I played this game, it just made me realise how they can be so much more than running along and jumping, and they can actually involve a really deep story and characters and everything. And when I played it, it just made me think like, I want to work on something that will affect someone the same way that Final Fantasy affected me. And so that's why I'm in the games industry.
I love Japan for the architecture, just the buildings and the way they've mixed modern with still embracing their heritage. It's gorgeous. What makes Japanese games so special is they're epic. The scale of the worlds they create is massive, they're huge, they just seem to go on forever, and the colors they create, they're beautiful to look at. The best game that I think has come out of Japan, I'm gonna have to go with Super Mario Brothers, because just Mario is such an iconic character, and anybody, anywhere, like they don't even have to pick up a game controller to know who Mario is, or Luigi.
You know, whenever I list out my favorite games of all time, I usually rattle off a list of Katamari Damacy, Super Mario 64, Loco Roco, Ocarina of Time, Okami, Parappa the Rapper, Final Fantasy VII, Animal Crossing, and as I'm going through this list, I'm realizing, wow, all my favorite games are Japanese. Why is that? I think what makes Japanese games so special is the incredible creativity. I've never met him, but I really love the games of Keita Takahashi, because there's just no one else like him. His games are insane, which I love. And my favorite games of all time are still the Katamari games, Katamari Damacy and We Heart Katamari, because they're just these worlds that I think about to this day and get the urge to go back to, which I think is a sign of a great game. I do love Japan. I love the kindness of the people. I love the care they bring to their work, and I love the art that they've given the world. I love Japan.
You know what, man, trying to pick the best game out of Japan is like trying to pick the best song. You know, for me, one that has always stayed with me is Shenmue on the Dreamcast. This was a game that was sort of, for its time, this huge, detailed open world, this amazing story, really cool fighting. And the thing I remember about Shenmue is I felt like I was visiting that sort of part of Greater Tokyo when I played the game. It was so detailed that when I first visited Japan about 6 years after that, I thought, you know what, man, I've been here. I've seen houses like this before. I've met people like this before. And so for me, Shenmue is a game that has always stayed with me. Not just because it's a brilliant game, but because it gave such a sense of sort of that slice of Japanese life. I'm lucky enough to have visited Japan several times. I love the blend of the ancient history and the modern technology, but it's always the people and the connections I make there that really stay with me. And it's because of those people that I know that Japan is going to overcome this. They're going to overcome, they're going to rebuild, they're going to be stronger than before because they have just some of the most amazing people in the whole world.
Japanese games are special because they sort of made the console game experience mainstream. There were older systems that came before the Nintendo Entertainment System, but Mario made it just sort of mainstream. Like, all my friends were talking about it all of a sudden. People thought video games were dead, but this thing came out that just brought everything back. Trying to choose your favorite game creator from Japan is like almost impossible because there's, you know, so many influential creators, but if I had to choose one, I'd have to choose Fumito Ueda, who made Shadow of the Colossus and Ico, and is working on a new game called The Last Guardian. Aesthetics are so important to games to me. Like, it's the first thing you see and hear, and I really just love his aesthetic. I think it's fantastic, and there's no one else in the world doing what he does. If you can wrap that pretty picture in a great package of gameplay, then, you know, that's when something truly magical happens. I had such a strong experience with the original Legend of Zelda when I was a young child. My parents got it for me because they were going away on a vacation, so I was able to just sort of get sucked into that world. That game just changed everything. It made me want to explore the world around me in a different way. I knew that that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I didn't know if I was going to make games or just figure out a way to play them forever, but I knew when I saw that game, I was like, this is something different. I was just glued to the television, and from then on, I played video games consistently for the rest of my life. So it's been, whatever, 25 years now of just doing that. My idea from a very early age, like 5 years old, of what a video game should be, Japanese game design was almost entirely responsible for that. So I credit the Japanese for making me love video games.
I think part of what makes Japanese games so special is that many Japanese games are preoccupied with beauty in a way that most Western games are not. I think it's impossible for me to pick one Japanese game creator that's my favorite because there are many that have been inspirational to me. But if I had to pick one, I think it would have to be Matsura Masaya because Paraparapa was actually the game that inspired me to start making video games. Japan is a fusion of natural world and technology and a fusion culturally of the distant past and the future in a way that I have never found anywhere else on Earth.
What makes Japanese games so special is that they really invented what I think of as long-form gaming. Gaming that's designed not to like take a quarter and be done with it, but games that you're designed to sit down and get immersed in and play for hours and hours and hours. Who's my favorite Japanese game creator? It's Shigeru Miyamoto because the man led the creation of Zelda, Mario, Metroid, all the things I think that led to what you think of as modern games. He is the father of all of that.
What makes Japanese games so special, I think, is their eclecticism. I mean, I love that, you know, Metal Gear sort of wears my inability to comprehend it as like a badge of honor. I love that it has this sort of playful thing going on that you just really can't see in Western games. I love that we have this 30-year-long investment in the ongoing battle between a plumber and a gorilla. And I love, you know, that there's this game where all you do is roll up all of these strange, eclectic little bits of junk and stuff and make planets out of them. I think that's so amazing and delightfully strange and playful. What I've always loved about Japan is the way their culture kind of reverberates against our own. I mean, I love this sort of collision of aesthetics that arises, you know, when you juxtapose something like Metal Gear Solid and Splinter Cell, or, you know, I love the way that we're kind of perpetually locked in this dance of tribute and homage and, you know, knowing each other and thinking about each other, and I think that's just a really, really beautiful thing. Our thoughts continue to be with the people of Japan during this difficult time. If you would like to contribute to the relief effort, please donate to the Red Cross. Thank you.
I grew up back when Sega and Nintendo were going at it, and so the games from both of those companies pretty much defined what video games were for me. And the Japanese sensibilities that are always evident in a lot of the titles that come out of that country still kind of push those buttons for me. So I've had the privilege to go to Japan for over a decade now, and I've come to love that country in a bunch of different ways every time I go. Because I think, like a lot of people, the very first time you go to Japan, the games get you there, right? Especially in our industry, it's like, oh my God, I get to go where the games come from. And for somebody that grew up the way that I did, loving Japanese games, this was a huge thing.
I think Japanese games, probably more than any other gaming industry in the world, brings to the forefront the special cultural clues and signals that it comes from Japan more than any other. I think if I were to pick one, though, I would pick Final Fantasy on the NES, the first game. In 8th grade, running around with the Light Warriors and picking different things. I think I played through that game like 3 or 4 times. And that experience really made me feel like this was a new medium that I could really wrap my brain around. There's so much culture and differences in the world, and Japan, instead of trying to ignore those differences, brings them to the forefront and is proud of them. That is something that can be lauded, in video games, but also all their culture.
Japanese games have always had a special place in my heart, mostly because of the innovation and the quirkiness. What I really love is that you can really see the creators' ideas shining through. I love Japanese food. I love Japanese culture, the Japanese aesthetic, Japanese design, but also, I think ultimately the Japanese people are fantastic. It's really difficult to pick one favorite Japanese game creator because there's so many fantastically talented people, but Kojima is someone who I was really looking up to a lot growing up and have been lucky enough to work with. I've gotten to know him personally, and it's great to see that kind of genius in action and to see someone who is still, striving to push the industry even further.
It's a popular answer, I'm sure, but my favorite Japanese games creator is Shigeru Miyamoto from Nintendo. Just his approach to how he designs games and the way he thinks about games, going out into his garden, exploring caves as a child. If I were to make games, I think that would be my approach. It's hard to pick one game as being the best game to ever come out of Japan, but my favorite game is definitely Super Metroid. I'm a longtime Nintendo fanboy, I'll happily admit, but Super Metroid to me is this perfect definition of how a game should play.
I think there's something undefinable about Japanese games. It's a bit magical that no one in the West kind of understands. So there's something always intriguing that I can't quite figure out. So one of my favorite games is Mr. Driller, where you're drilling sort of ceaselessly downwards, and there's something really atmospheric and sort of claustrophobic about that and the threat of things falling on you. And it captures that so well, but in a real kind of game puzzly environment. And that's just an amazing balance of so many things. I think I love Japan for so many reasons, but probably the main reason is the food, which is all just great.
Hi, my name is Philip Kohler, and I work at Game Informer. My favorite Japanese game creator is Goichi Suda, better known as Suda51. He's kind of the insane mastermind behind No More Heroes, Killer 7, games like that. And I think he just embodies the sense of creativity and somebody who's always willing to take a risk. Like, he's not scared of trying something that's never been done before in games. For me, the game that always comes to mind is Final Fantasy VI, and it was the first game that I played where I kind of realized I'm gonna be playing video games for the rest of my life, and if possible, I wanna have a job involved in video games because it just blew me away with the writing and the depth and the scope, and it was just the first time that I realized how big video games could be.
There are 3 things about Japanese games that make them incredibly special. 1, the hair in the main characters, way better than the hair on anybody else. 2, the weapons in the games, far more awesome than any other game out there. And 3, 2 words, booby physics. I think the best game to come out of Japan is a very hard question, so I'll answer it in this way. I think one of the coolest games to come out of Japan was Final Fantasy VII, because I think it was the first game that I maybe put in more than 40 or 50 hours into, and it was the first game that made me feel like it was totally okay to lock myself in my house for a weekend and play a game. I love Japan because if you've ever been there, the sense of national pride and love that the population has for Japan is one of the most infectious and inspiring things you will ever experience. And because they have coffee machines that have Tommy Lee Jones on the side of them, and that is awesome.
I'm Sam Kennedy, and I'm the editorial director of OneUp.com. My favorite Japanese game creator is probably Tetsuya Mizuguchi. He's the creator of games like Space Channel 5 and Rez. And what I really like about him is that he's kind of pushed the boundaries of what a game can be. So he'll mix, really cool visuals with music and interesting game design. So I think he just really kind of pushes the boundaries of what a game could be. If I think back, the games that really inspired me to get into the game industry were titles like Castlevania, where even though back when I was a kid, the graphics kind of 8-bit sprites, I think I could see what the game designers really were trying to do in those worlds. And for me, it just made such an impression on me as a kid. And I think that got me to want to be part of the games industry and actually write about games and tell more people about why I feel so passionate about games. If you'd like to help with the earthquake relief in Japan, please donate to the Red Cross through our website, gamersheartjapan.com.
What I really love about Japanese games is you never really know what you're going to get. Anything is possible. The imagination and the creativity that goes into them, anything you can think of, they will find a way to make a game out of it and make it this weird, wonderful, quirky thing that you just really can't experience anywhere else. Japan gives me a different way of looking at the world. There's this constant sense of exuberance and joy at just discovering everyday life. Their love of grand art is wonderful. The way they embrace their history and their culture is awesome. There's a lot to love about Japan.
For me, without question, and I think you'll probably get this response from a lot of people, my favorite Japanese game designer is Shigeru Miyamoto. You think of Donkey Kong, Legend of Zelda, Star Fox, you can go on and on and on. This is the man who built Nintendo, and in the process, the man who really helped build the gaming industry. I think the best game to come out of Japan is Donkey Kong. And I know that's going back to a classic, but I first played it at my local arcade and later on the Nintendo NES, and now you've got a whole new generation playing it on Wii. On the arcade, it was such a difficult game to play. It's reputedly one of the most difficult arcade games of all time, and I just think it's so great now that you're bringing this classic title to a whole new generation. So for me, the best Japanese game ever designed is Donkey Kong. I don't think there was any one game in particular that made me want to cover video gaming as a job, but at the same time, the games that were coming out of Japan in the late 80s and early 90s really put you, the gamer, at the center of the action as an active participant in a way that I'd never seen before. And in doing so, they really captured my imagination and made me, as a gamer, feel that anything was possible.
Hi, my name is Megan Marie and I work for Game Informer. I'm going to bend the rules a little bit with this one. My favorite Japanese video game creator is Nobuo Uematsu. His music basically defined a lot of my childhood. While a lot of girls were listening to Britney Spears and pop music, I was listening to his music at 5 a.m. out in the cold in the middle of the winter, pretending I knew how to conduct an orchestra to One Winged Angel. And his music was just so captivating in the games, and it just set the world apart from anything I'd ever experienced, that he really, more than any creator, even internationally, influenced me growing up. But the first game that really captured what I thought video games could do and what was possible in gaming was, for me, Final Fantasy VII. There was just something about the characters and the world, and even at the time, the graphics were so impressive, and it was the most captivating game experience I'd ever had. I love Japan as a fan and as a professional because it is basically a central hub for everything that I enjoy, whether it's video games or anime or costume play or fashion. I've said this several times before, if I was going to live anywhere outside the United States, I'd live in Japan. I love it there.
Japanese games have come across from the very beginning, ever since I started as a gamer. The biggest one that springs to mind is actually Silent Hill 2, a game that had such a deep emotional impact on me. Made me think, made me feel. The whole series has been important for me, but Silent Hill 2 especially is one of those moments in gaming which is really difficult to forget. Kind of changes you forever as a gamer.
I think what really sets Japanese games apart from a lot of the other ones out there, what makes them special, is that Japanese games really try to make you feel something, whereas a lot of Western games shoot for this hyper-realism to get it as realistic as possible. Japanese games, for the most part, aren't really interested in that. They go in the completely opposite direction. You look at a game like Bayonetta, It has nothing to do with realism, and it doesn't want to. It's just as far out there as you can possibly get, and it's a blast. It's so fun to play, and I think that's really what's really special about Japanese game development, is just trying to make you feel something immediately, right away, and that you are just enjoying the game. There's nothing to get into, you just enjoy it right away.
If you think back to like the Mario games back in the day, how many platforms have come out since Mario? And how many games do not feel nearly as good as this 20-year-old game? It's just great to have this entire country that's so into video games producing all these games that are just fun, very solid, very polished, and has really influenced the industry as a whole. You know, I can't imagine one Western developer who can say like, yeah, Japanese games have had no influence on me whatsoever. Without Japanese gaming, the gaming industry wouldn't be where it's at today. You know, as the country we look to for innovation, full of clever ideas, full of cool, quirky, weird stuff, you know, it's an awesome country.
I think that one of the main things that make Japanese video games so special is that they always strive to create worlds from scratch and make them kind of very involving and adding a bit of fantasy left and right, even though sometimes their worlds might feel a little contemporary, but it's always kind of like something special and a very strong flavor going on at the same time. And on the same token, they don't really care for photorealism, but their games are very credible and very involving at the same time. I think that the best game that has ever come out of Japan is Resident Evil 4. It's probably one of the best games ever made, if not the best game ever made. I know I have a couple, but the thing is that the game just never lets you go. Even compared to games today, the GameCube version still has some of the best graphics ever made. The gameplay is just perfectly balanced. You just never really wish it to end, and that's what a game should be all about, really.
The best game to come out of Japan? That's a toughie. I mean, there's a lot of great games that come from Japan. Probably the one I put the most hours into that I can think of offhand would be Metal Gear Solid 4. I mean, just the overall movie-like presentation of that game. It was like watching a movie, and you get to play every once in a while, which was great too. Hideo Kojima, I mean, that guy makes quality games, and he has for many years now. Looking forward to see his next, whatever he's got in the works. Hopefully some new Metal Gear, maybe.
I had an aunt that lived in Japan for 10 years, and so she wouldn't be able to come home and visit us because it was super expensive and she didn't have the time, so she would send Christmas gifts that were full of Japanese trinkets and things like that, which really got me super interested and curious at a young age about this magical world that I, at the time, never thought I would ever be able to go visit. And then as I got older, I got more into anime and manga and things of that nature, so that kind of pushed the culture on me even more at a later date. And then with video games, things like Eco and Shadow of the Colossus, I was really blown away, not only by the type of atmosphere both games pushed, but also the fact that the games had specific goals to tug on your heartstrings. Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time, totally one of my top 5 favorite games of all time. I mean, all the Zeldas were great, but for some reason, that one really, really stuck with me growing up. I love Japan, and if you guys love Japan as much as I do, make sure and donate to the Red Cross if you want to help out with the earthquake and tsunami relief.
Japanese games are special and will continue to be special because they actually really had a big influence on creating the language of video games. They were so influential in the very beginning of video games, and the decisions they made and the way that they communicate ideas and concepts to gamers will reverberate throughout the video game industry forever. My favorite Japanese game creator has to be Mizuguchi, because when anybody comes and asks me, are video games art? All I have to do is point them to one of Mizuguchi's games. A Japanese video game that was very important to me and in my perception of video games and my future career was a game called Phantasy Star 3. It was on the Sega Genesis, and I played that game for hours and hours and hours, and probably hundreds of hours. And beating that game, I think 3 times that it required beating it to really complete the story, was a really proud moment in my young life.
Well, I mean, without Japanese game design, we wouldn't really have a video game industry past Pong and Atari. Personally, my favorite Japanese game of all time has got to be Katamari Damacy. I mean, that game really changed my attitude. It was bursting with creativity, totally new gameplay concept, totally new ideas in this game. To me, it's really one of the finest achievements in game design. And for me, it just encapsulates everything I love about Japan. It's got crazy characters in it. It's got kind of touching music. It's got touching characters. It's offbeat. It's wacky. By the time it came out, I had been a journalist for a couple years. I was getting a little jaded, playing a lot of the same feeling games. And then Katamari came out. I'd never seen anything like it. The soundtrack was just stuck in my head. The only video game song I had at my wedding was from Katamari Damacy, Que Sera Sera. Listen to it, gotta go listen to it. You're gonna love it.
My personal favorite is Final Fantasy VII. Just, the first really emotionally engaging game. I think that had a big impact on us.
That'd probably be one of my choices too, but I'd probably have to pick Sonic the Hedgehog on the Genesis, just because that was a game I played to death, back in the early 90s.
I think just the fact, playing The Legend of Zelda so many years ago and just being amazed and just drawn into that world really was something special for me.
I'm a big fan of all the Mario games and the Sonic games and Zelda as well. I mean, there's so many great games to choose from. Final Fantasy as well.
I think one thing I find about Japanese games that's always amazing is that sense of creativity and amazement. They're always going to surprise you.
Might add to that, just the precision and economy, the controls, the interface, everything just is seamless and just fits together so well. I'm a big fan of sushi, so I love Japanese culture. I love sushi. It's a beautiful country, and it's a great place to visit.
It's amazing history, amazing culture. Really one of the most important countries in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, my name is Evan Wells, and I am the co-president of Naughty Dog. I have a ton of games that I love that came out of Japan. Rez, Katamari Damacy, Ico, Shadow of the Colossus, and Pac-Man. If I had to pick one, it'd have to be Super Mario Brothers. I think that game has done more to inspire many generations of gamers as well as game makers. Japanese games have a certain quality and aesthetic, oftentimes a quirkiness that really sets them apart. I think anybody can probably tell when you're playing a Japanese game, but it's very difficult for somebody outside of Japan to recreate that same experience. I love Japan because of their people. The art, the culture. I have family in Japan. I've visited there many times. It's a beautiful country, and I fell in love with it early.
We love Japan.
I heard the music to Final Fantasy X, and I was just so captivated by it. And I actually got involved in the video game community, as well as video games and just writing about them online and just for fun, across fan sites. I never knew that this could actually turn into a career or a job. So I'm really thankful that happened because, I love games and I love the music in them. Thank you, Your Grace. I love Japan for so many different reasons. Obviously, one of them being for video games, but my other passion in life is eating. So I actually love Japan a lot for its food. And I really love the people. The culture is so fascinating to me because they're so super polite and they're so open to foreigners, and I kind of wish more of the world was like that. I think it would be a much better place, but I really do enjoy going there and feeling really welcome.
The 2 years that I spent in Japan, I count as among the best in my life. When I moved to Japan and started making friends with Japanese gamers, we immediately discovered this amazing thing. We had shared cultural experiences that we could sit down and we could talk about. We grew up literally on opposite sides of the world from each other, and we could sit down and we could talk about playing the same video games, having the same interesting experiences in our childhoods. We did not have shared books that we could talk about. We didn't have movies or music or TV shows. We didn't have any of those things, but video games. We had all played the same video games. We could all talk about the same video games.
Hi, my name is Brian Ashcraft, and I write for Kotaku.com. Who's my favorite Japanese game creator? Well, that's a hard question because there's so many outstanding game creators in Japan. But for me personally, I just really like Yu Suzuki from Sega. Growing up, walking to arcades and seeing these amazing creations of his were just something that I'll never forget. Younger creators, I really like Fumito Ueda, who's currently working on The Last Guardian. He's a very sharp guy, and just talking to him and listening to what he has to say about games or stuff that he wants to do, it's enlightening. I think the thing that makes Japanese games so special are the things that make Japan so special. If you concede that games are a reflection of the culture, in which they're made, or a reflection of the people that make them, then obviously Japan itself will seep into the games, you know? So that's something that makes them very interesting to play. It also makes it obviously very interesting to visit Japan or to live in Japan. Why do I love Japan? Well, you know, I live in Japan. I've lived here for a decade, and my kids are Japanese. This was a decision that I made to come here, and then, you know, ended up staying. And it's a great country. It's really a great country. It's my home.
I've always respected the game creators in Japan, from Kojima to Miyamoto, but my favorite's become Shinji Mikami, the creator of Resident Evil, who I've had the great fortune of spending a lot of time with over the last year. He inspired me to start learning Japanese so our talks could be a bit deeper. But when we talk video games, that language barrier seems to kind of disappear. We're both very similar designers. We look for the same things. And his excitement and knowledge for crafting a player experience is really, really inspiring and really amazing. I love Japan for their culture, their history, their video games, their food, but most of all for the friends that I have there. And if you can, please donate to the Japan Earthquake and Tsunami Relief with the Red Cross. Thank you so much.